This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one-of-its-kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sfurti, shakti and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Storytellers Cafe, and I'm your host, Usha Venkatraman. Namaste, good morning, a very good day, and namaskaram to all the viewers in Bangalore, Karnataka. Yes, you've guessed, our guest is from the beautiful garden city of Bangalore, where I'm told the temperature is quite nippy and cold. It's raining, and I think a perfect weather to listen to stories. So cozy up with your family, especially children, because today's episode is for the family audience. So sit back, listen to stories. After all, that's the USP of Storytellers Cafe, right? We've completed a year on Bharat FM. We have had about more than 50 storytellers who graced our studios, sharing their stories with the global Indian diaspora. Soon we're going to be inviting storytellers from around the world and showcase them on Storytellers Cafe. Not only Indians, but other storytellers as well. Like I said, sit back and enjoy. Let me introduce our guest for today evening. Vijaylakshmi Nagaraj from the beautiful garden city of Bangalore, who is an educational consultant, author, and storyteller. And this will be a two-part episode. Today, on August 1st, will be the first part. We'll continue with the second part on the 8th of August. Vijaylakshmi's special focus has been integrating storytelling to textbook learning. She has been storytelling to children suffering from cancer using her handmade puppets, as she believes that storytelling is an excellent therapy for children suffering from long-term illness. She was involved in a reading to recovery program for the Tsunami orphans in Nagapattinam in the year 2005. She has authored a number of children's books and written research-oriented articles on children's literature. Vijaylakshmi's love for children and the desire to ensure that they have a happy childhood has been her focus and mission in life. Vijaylakshmi is a life member of the Association of Writers and Illustrators for Children, AWIC, a New Delhi-based NGO. She also worked with the Akshara Foundation in their library programs and has been a member of the steering committee for psychosocial support and mental health services in disasters, the National Disaster Management Authority, of which she's been a part of, Govt of India organization. Vijaylakshmi has indeed done India proud She has showcased traditional Indian storytelling at the World Congress on Children's Books in Cape Town, South Africa in the year 2004. Also represented India at the world's largest children's book fair in Italy in the year 1998 and 2003. In the year 2008, Vijayalakshmi was invited to the 31st International Board on Books for Young People, IBI, World Congress held at Denmark to present a paper on reading to children in crisis. In the year of 2012, in August, Vijaylakshmi was again invited to the 33rd IBI World Congress at London, United Kingdom. Her paper was on borderless tales impacting young minds. It was very well received. She has set up a children's library at the Chandrasekhar's Institute for Speech and Hearing. Vijayalakshmi has the distinction of having trained teachers and set up libraries in schools in the conflict-hit areas of the north and northeast of India. She believes that stories and books are comforting to children in crisis-hit areas. I couldn't agree more. It takes them to a world beyond violence and conflict and does help them cope. She is known for her innovative teaching techniques, encouraging children's creativity into their learning process. She has been a principal in a primary school in the Northeast. She encouraged children to read storybooks. This helped them in their writing and communication skills. Vijayalakshmi believes that the emotional quotient in children is of prime importance and uses storytelling and book reading very effectively to address this. Vijayalakshmi has also authored many books. One of them, The Sun Magic, has sold over 1,500 copies and is being used as a class text, as a textbook in the school. Her other published works include Jhilmil the Butterfly, Chip, Chirp, Hoot, The Sounds of Nature and Other Stories, a folk tale from Arunachal Pradesh published in a collection Once Upon a Time in India, a story on communal harmony published in a collection published by the National Foundation of Communal Harmony, and also about the natural wonders of India. Vijayalakshmi's recent work includes a Tamil translation of Julia Donaldson's very popular book, A Squash and a Squeeze, published by Pan Macmillan. Vijayalakshmi has won a prize for her short story in a competition organized by the Children's Book Trust this year. The pandemic has indeed worked well for authors, storytellers, and illustrators. She is one of the founder members of Booklore, a Bangalore-based book club for children. Presently, she is a consultant with Funky Rainbow, the best independent and traveling bookstore in Bangalore. So, ladies and gentlemen, sit back and give an applause to Vijaylakshmi Nagaraj as I bring her onto screen. Hello, Vijaylakshmi.
Thank you so much, Usha. I am really delighted to be on this wonderful platform which you have initiated. Indeed, I'm honored and humbled to be here this today on this and talking to this August gathering of my journey from childhood and the stories which I created through these little anecdotes and memories of growing up in the Northeast. Thank you, Usha, and I'm really, really grateful to you for giving me this platform and those kind words that you have said about me. Thank you very much, and hello to all the listeners and audience across the globe. I'm indeed delighted to be here this morning, evening for some, to be sharing some of my years growing up and some lovely, delightful stories. So, here we
Yes,
go.
Vijaylaxmi, before you just begin, I would like to tell the audience that the recording of this show is available on the YouTube channel of Bharat FM. If you go to YouTube and you just click Storytellers Cafe with Vijaylakshmi Nagaraj, it's there for posterity. You can go and click. And also, the segment can be viewed at any time at your convenience on Facebook, on Bharat FM Facebook page. So, without any further announcements, Vijayalakshmi, the stage is yours. And like I always ask, how did you begin this wonderful journey? I know a little bit about it, but please do share it with our audience.
Thank you, Usha. And I'm delighted that this is going to be present for people to listen to whenever they want. Thank you so much. Well, where do I begin? In the northeast of India, it was also known as the Scotland of the East. Nestled in the hills with pine trees was this beautiful hill station of Shillong. And it is now the capital of Meghalaya. But that time, Shillong was the capital of Assam because the other states had not yet come into being. And what resounds in my mind is where waters are falling, the hillsides are calling Shillong. Where cool air whispers, the breezes whisper Shillong. So this is the song I learned when I was a kid. And Shillong was one of those places which has been ingrained in me because that is what I call hometown, though I belong to the south of India. And what does Shillong have as memories for me? Well, the oranges, the fruits, the carefree life, the beautiful sunshine, the butterflies, and the lovely friends I made in the school, which was on top of a hill, simply out of a storybook. Yes, my school, Loreto Convent, was right on top of a hill. And we would just run up the hill to school and run down the hill. For us, it was the most easiest thing to do as a kid. We had no qualms about it. There were no, because it was a hill station, we didn't have school buses and stuff like that. But walking, all the time we were walking, running, walking, running. So the childhood memories were all this and the rains. 6 months of rains, day in and day out. Pitter patter on the tin roof because all the roofs were made of tin. And the rainfall would carry on for days and nights. But it didn't bother us. We would have our good old duckback raincoat and gumboots, and we would be splashing our way into school and back. And then we would be waiting, mother would be waiting at home with a lovely fireplace on because it gets so cold when it rains. And we would just quickly take off our gumboots and raincoats and then sit in front of the fireplace. So Shillong were these memories, the carefree life, the fruit trees, the butterflies, and the fun that we had. My parents had they were strict, but they allowed us to enjoy. They would only tell us, don't forget that you have to study well to achieve your dreams. And that was it. So as we grew up, and then this fireplace would remind me of the chimney boy, because every Sunday we would have this young boy going up the roof with a cloth tied around his head and his face covered with a little mask and with a long string with a brush at the bottom to sweep the chimney. And downstairs inside the house was his assistant, who would hold a lovely piece of sack against the wall of the chimney so that the soot didn't come into the house. So this was a fascinating thing for all of us as kids because the chimney had to be swept clean. And these two boys would do it so happily, and we were so curious because the chimney brought to us the memories of the story about Guess who? The three little pigs and the chimney where the wolf came down. So it was like a fascinating thing for us to see this. Then Shillong also had lovely memories of stories. You see, we had a beautiful school library, and it was a happy place for us. And guess what? The nuns in the school would tell us and suggest to us what books to read. If they felt we were not ready for a particular book, they would say, read it later. That was a fantastic guideline for us on choosing a book. And we had the standalone bookshop, Modern Book Depot, which had the most fascinating books available to us, which my parents would just buy by the dozens because they felt reading is very important. And there was nothing else. We had no TV, music and reading. So we would go to this Modern Book Depot, browse around the books, and my mother loved her Woman and Home, which was her favorite magazine those days, which she would buy from the Modern Book Depot. And the third place was the State Central Library. It was a lovely, huge, spacious library where father took us on a Sunday morning. And he would browse the newspapers, and we would be in the quiet children's corner reading up some biographies and stories. So that was our childhood. And then chasing butterflies, going up to Shillong Peak, enjoying the Wards Lake. I mean, these were just walk, and we just loved it. And parents' belief was go and play. And the time, because you see, northeast of India, the sun rises very early and it also sets very quickly. So by 5 o'clock in the evening, it's pitch dark. So the deadline was 4 o'clock, you have to be home. So with this growing up of schooling, we had to attend our dance classes. We learned Manipuri dance and folk dances. We would run up the hill. It was called Jacob's Ladder, narrow little place, and we used to run up the hill to our dance class, which was held in the Rani of Sidley's home. She had organized it, and her daughter was also learning dance. So we would run up to the dance class where Auntie would always have some chestnuts ready for us. And that was the first time I tasted chestnuts. Because later, when I used to be reading the Enid Blytons, I would read about the chestnuts and the treacle and the waffles. And I got a taste of it all in my childhood through my mother's friends. And father was very, very open to us going for riding, wanting to do what we wanted. The mother was a little strict about it, and she said, no, no riding. It'll be dangerous for the girls. My father said, let them have a taste of it. It's okay. And both my parents always believed that it is good to respect everybody, every human being. So the house help we had, Tiludai, lived with my parents for about 26 years. And when he came to the south of India, to Palakkad, during my wedding, my grandmother was so fascinated trying to speak to him in her broken Hindi. He was a delightful character. He used to be at my father's office, and he would also help at home to earn a little extra. And if we wasted food, he would be the first one to admonish us. And his sister Draupadi, a lovely, warm, chubby woman she was. And when she laughed, you would never be able to see her eyes. And she had the most fascinating stories to tell us. Oral tradition was very, very prevalent then. And the most interesting Akbar Birbal stories, ghost stories, and her made up stories would be delightful. And we would sit with her for hours just listening to the stories. And it was during this time that there were some wars that happened. The 1962 Chinese aggression, the 1971 war. Now, during the 1962 Chinese aggression, we were all children. We didn't know what was happening. We knew there was a war. And what really we noticed was that my mother, with her friends from the Talents Club, were knitting socks for the soldiers because it was a very cold place they were fighting in. And so, what did we do as kids? we were given the task of packing these pairs of socks in cartons, making sure that every pair was properly packed. So that was my first little thing. And it was like, oh, this is a lot of fun. We didn't really understand the seriousness, but we knew, okay, we have to do something for the troops. Then in 71 war, that was the time when we knew a little, I understood a little more, because we were told when there's an air raid siren, you must get into the bunker and wait there till you get an all clear siren. So this was just the basic we knew. So Draupadi would be there, and if my parents had gone for a walk or something, she would take us into the bunker. And my little sister was still a baby. Now, when we were going into the bunker, Draupadi would always admonish me, Jaldi chalo, what are you doing? And here, Vijayalakshmi was busy trying to take a loaf of bread. Why? Because I felt that we'll have to be there for too long and I'll be hungry. So Draupadi would be always at me, "Ki, what is this? All the time you're busy getting some food to eat." Anyway, those were the memories of my childhood. And then I would see that my parents would, with their little bit, would always give, and most importantly, to Draupadi's husband who had throat cancer, my mother would take care of his treatment, his fruit, and his milk. And my father would say, look, even if we have little, we can share what we have. We must do it. So that was one very important learning during our childhood. Whatever you have, learn to give some. And as we grew up, and as I grew, these little anecdotes and stories remained with me. So Shillong was full of all this, lot of fun. And even today, my school batchmates, we do keep in touch. We started off late in life, but we keep in touch. And we managed to spend two beautiful get-togethers before the pandemic. Then the other thing which brings me back to my father is that during the pandemic, I was watching all these advertisements and the newspaper ads telling people, wash your hands, keep distance. And I was remembering my father. When we were kids, the first thing, wash your legs and hands. Have you washed your hands properly with soap? Yes, father, we have properly, thoroughly. And he would tell the same to all the staff in the house. Wash your hands before you start doing anything. And now that became a good habit. But now when we have to keep on insisting, I go back to those days and say, my God, we did it and it just became a good habit. Washing your feet and hands, we didn't have to relearn now because it was there with us. So these small little basics, the routine of life started there in Shillong. Then in school, we had a little school magazine called Loretto Girl. And we were all asked to contribute. It was a cyclo-style magazine. And you won't believe it, but my mother had saved up one Loretto Girl, which was in her cupboard, in which I had written an article about the good and the bad of the TV. And later in life, my mother said, look, this is what you wrote when you were a kid. And she gave it to me. So school was all about that and about the beautiful dance dramas we had in our school. And in two dance dramas that I recollect, Chitrangada, I had to play the part of Arjun. And there was Shama. And then we had these wonderful plays, English plays, which was encouraged in our school. And we would be loving to wear those gowns and the caps and acting. The Hiawatha, the Barber of Seville, Chitrangada, Shama, all this was part of growing up. So they were all stories for me, little stories which we would love to narrate and people would love to hear. Then as life went on, my kids would love to hear about my growing up years. So every night at bedtime, it was stories, and more stories. So this made me realize.
Vijaylaxmi, if I may just
Yes.
intervene, this is beautiful. I mean, I'm completely enraptured listening to your story from your infancy and Shillong up to, coming here, now settling down in Bangalore, which you are just started. It's beautiful. I mean, the narrative is so descriptive. I can visualize, it's not only are you a good writer, I can definitely say you're a wonderful storyteller because you use the power of words. So do continue. I just wanted to say that. Sorry about
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So from Shillong, we carried on. And as I got married and my children were young, I felt the best bonding were these stories. And they would love to hear about my growing up years. In fact, sometimes if I slipped up on some of the incidents of my growing up years, my children would point it out and say, Mama, but that was not what you said last time. So it was a creative program every night. And I really felt the bonding, the security, the happiness in the mind came with these stories. Not only that, as a young kid, I remember sitting in my grandmother's house on her steps after dinner in her house and listening to some mythological stories or also some little knickknacks of gossip my grandmother would tell me about some neighbors. And that used to be a fascinating time that we had. So this was ingrained into me. And later, when I decided in what I would like to do, I decided I would like to do something for children. And what better than doing something like storytelling or becoming an educationist? So I did my primary and Montessori training. I still remember one of the external examiners had come and we had to do a story with some props. That time, my mother in law was very good in knitting little dolls. So she had given me a whole set of dolls, which I used in my story as props. And it was a story about a princess who wouldn't smile. And she had made this beautiful princess with two pigtails and a beautiful ribbon, and the queen with the lovely, the Indian looking queen. And I did this story narration to the external examiner during one of the exams. And she was fascinated. And she said, How did you do this? How did you get these props? Then I said, My mother in law helped me by making these little dolls, which I still have to date in my collection. So it was a treat for them that my storytelling was so well appreciated. And then in school, as a teacher, I would always think that why not start my class with a story? I would connect a story to the classroom learning. So it could be a science story, it could be a math story, it could be something for the English lesson. So I always had books which had a connect to the story. And the first 5 to 10 minutes was just story time. And believe you me, this helped the children to focus, and they felt very happy because they were all with me first with the story, and then later they would enjoy their lesson. Now, for example, as an English teacher, 46 children trying to do this, read the same lesson obviously would be boring even for the kids. So I decided after the first 5 kids had read the English chapter lesson that we had, I told them all to bring their favorite books to school and I would ask them to read their stories. Well, it helped them and it helped me because they didn't get bored with the English class. And the head of the department in my school would say, Vijaylaxmi, what a way you got the kids to do their English, because the English became very good and they were so confident because it was not just that one chapter they were all reading, but they were also reading their favorite stories, which I felt was very impactful. Yes,
Vijaylaxmi, may I ask you to take a pause and tell us a story. You see, the USP of Storytellers Cafe is to listen to stories, but what you have been telling is a story in itself. But there are people who might want to listen to a story from you.
Okay.
You take a pause, then continue, because you said you started your classes with a 5-minute of story. So could you share one story from the book that you've written?
Definitely.
Something
I have
about
it.
it you can share with us.
Of course. So now I'll take you back to the storyland and to the first picture book of mine, Jill Mill the Butterfly. And this is my little Jill Mill the Butterfly, which children love to watch. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. Jill Mill the butterfly. Oh, she with a soft delicate wings, loved to fly up to the sky, loved to flutter around the flowers. And she loved it when there was a bright sunshine and she would flutter from flower to flower to flower. Oh, she was very happy. And her wings, the soft and delicate, colorful wings, she would flutter it gently and sometimes vigorously. So Jilbin the butterfly, she had two friends too, Minty the myna and Squeaky the squirrel. They all were very good friends. Now, one day, Minty the myna was sitting on the branch of a tree and looking this way and that way, this way and that way. And she said, Jilmil. No sign of Jilmil. Jilmil. Where are you, Jilmil? Just then, Squeaky the squirrel peeped out of the hole of the big jamun tree. Squeaky looked around with her beady eyes. And Minty the miner said, Hey, Squeaky, have you seen Jilmil anywhere? I haven't been able to see her. Squeaky also looked around. Where was Jilmil? Was Jilmil? Where are you, Jilmil? And Jilmil was sitting under the leaf of the tree, rather sad, not fluttering her wings. Minty the miner said, Hey, Jilmil, tell us what's happened. Why are you so sad today? Usually you're fluttering around everywhere, singing la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. And today, why are you so sad? No, I don't feel like flying today. I don't feel like fluttering my wings. But why? Tell us. Maybe we can help you. Then Squeaky the squirrel said, Hey, Jilmil, come on. Why aren't you flying? Tell us. So Jilmil said, today I wanted to fly, but I couldn't find Mr. Sun. And I feel sad when there's no Mr. Sun around. Oh, oh yes. Today, where has Sun gone? Where has Mr. Sun gone? Oh yes, Jilmil, shall we do one thing? Shall we go looking for the sun? We'll help you. Let us all three of us go look for the sun. So Jilmil felt nice that her friends were also going to help her find the sun. So Jilmil said, okay, let's go. Let's find where Mr. Sun has gone today. Why isn't he around? I just feel happy when he's around. And I don't like it when he's not around. Okay, don't worry. Let's go and find Mr. Sun. So the three of them, Jilmil was fluttering her wings and looking around. Minty the myna flapped her wings and was also looking around with her beady eyes. And Squeaky the squirrel, keeping up with them, scampered as fast as he could, his huge bushy tail behind him. He scampered, keeping up. And Minty the myna and Jilmil the butterfly made sure that Squeaky was also following them. They looked around, here and there. And as Jilmil passed the clouds, the beautiful clouds, the gentle clouds, The wind is blowing the clouds here and there. The cloud sings a song. Don't fret, sun will be there. Minty the miner says, hey children, do you think the clouds were giving us some message about Mr. Sun? Children said, I don't know. They said something about, they did say something that soon we will see Mr. Sun. But I'm not sure. We still have to look for Mr. Sun. As the March wind blows, and we shall go, you will find Mr. Sun soon, soon, soon. Ah, the clouds are singing. They're saying we'll find Mr. Sun. Oh, that's wonderful. Then they said, hey, Minty, I know. Let's go and ask Flora. Flora? But where is Flora? Flora, in the garden. Let's go to that garden where Flora is there. She lives there. She will surely know where Mr. Sun is. Because Flora's best friend is Mr. Sun. Okay, let's go. So they went looking for Flora in the garden. They said, Flora, Flora, where are you? Flora, where are you? They saw that Flora was in that beautiful big garden. But she had bent her head down. And she was also looking very sad. Oh, Flora is also very sad today. Flora, we've come to ask you, have you seen Mr. Sun? Flora was still drooping. Flora, come tell us. We are looking for Mr. Sun. We haven't seen him all day. Just then, the clouds parted and a ray of sunshine fell on Flora. Little more, the clouds parted and there was another ray of sunshine. And soon, bright Mr. Sun looked down. And as the sun looked down, Flora opened up and looked at the sun. Her face bright, the petals open, bright yellow, and she looked up to the sun. And Jilbel said, Flora, we also can see Mr. Sun, and you are looking at Mr. Sun, and that's how your petals are open. You're bright and yellow as Mr. Sun. Oh, the Minty the miner said, oh, Mr. Sun, we were looking for you. Where were you? Where did you hide yourself? Jilbel was most upset. She refused to fly, refused to flutter her wings. Where were you? Mr. Sun shone brightly from them, each ray hitting the flowers, the trees, the bushes. Flora looked up at the sun and she said, Mr. Sun, I am so happy. You are the secret of my energy. Minty the miner said, of course, Mr. Sun, when you come, I get all the ripe fruits in the tree. Those jamun needs to get ripe, and only when you're there, it gets ripened. Squeaky the squirrel looked up at Mr. Sun and said, oh, Mr. Sun, where were you? We were looking for you all the time. Please don't go and hide yourself, because when you come, we feel energized. We feel good, because you are the secret of all our energies. See, without you, Flora is sad. Without you, Jilbel is sad. Minty and I feel so sad because none of the fruits get ripe for us. Mr. Sun, you are the secret of our energy. Don't go away and hide between those clouds. And Mr. Sun smiled, the warm rays falling on them. And Flora in that beautiful cool breeze, with her petals all open, was swaying as if she was dancing. And Jilmil was fluttering her delicate wings. She was fluttering them as gently first as possible and as vigorously. And she was going from flower to flower, singing. And Minty, the miner, Squeaky the squirrel, was singing with her. They were humming with her. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. Mm-hmm. La 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 la. So, the butterfly story that I remember, because Shillong was a land of butterflies, the tiger moth, the cabbage butterflies, the colorful butterflies. All the time we were chasing butterflies. So my little
Lovely.
finger
Okay.
had this.
I'm coming to that, Vijaylakshmi. So, since we spoke, I know that Shillong is the memories inspired you to write about Jilmil the butterfly. So, you can tell us, and when this was your first book that you wrote? This was the
No,
first story.
no, this was before this. There was a collection of 5 books called Anytime Stories. Now, what happened was my mother in law also was very good in writing, but she would write for the adults in a magazine called Women's Era. So when she came and stayed with me in Delhi, she did a workshop on children's writing, and she wrote some stories for children. Then the publisher said, "I want to bring out a set of 5 books." So she had about 6 stories, 2 per book. So he said, "No, I want more stories." So then I pitched in and wrote 4 stories for the publisher. So he brought out a set of 5 books called Anytime Stories. In each book, there were 2 stories. So that was the first publication of mine, which happened and it was published in Jalandhar. Publisher was in Delhi, but his printing press was in Jalandhar. And it so happened I was living in Jalandhar, and one day I was training some librarians, the soldiers' wives, on how they could run a library and do storytelling. So when I was doing that, I said, "I'll take you to a printing press." And the publisher said, "Please come and look at our printing press." So when we went there, my books were there, and it was getting ready for publication. And that's the time when I saw it. The publisher said, "Would you like to give us some suggestions?" And lo and behold, I gave them suggestions on the color scheme and the border. And I also told them the characters need not be old fashioned, they can be a little modern. So I helped in the little illustrations that he did, and the designing of the book. And the 5 books were printed. And with this, those ladies who I was training as librarians had an opportunity to really see how books were published. And they later became trained to be storytellers. And I got them certificates, and they started working in schools. So that was the first publication.
Wonderful, Vijayalakshmi. I know I am interrupting in between, but it's for the listeners. I just want to connect the dots. So beautifully you narrated the story. I listen to stories a lot, but it's always a pleasure to listen to someone else tell a story, and you narrated it so beautifully with so many descriptions. I could visualize Jill Mill playing with her friends, the squirrel and the little myna bird,
Right.
and the sunflower, which is actually kind of drooping. So I pictured the flower as sunflower, and then opening up when the sun shone. Beautiful. It, and like I said, like you said in the beginning, when you were talking about your journey, that you use stories to teach about basic concepts in science. So this is a beautiful story to talk about nature and the science that is related to it, about clouds, the rains, and the sun. Beautiful, Vijayalakshmi. So then how did your journey, because like I told the listeners that this is a two-part series, so we will end the first part at some place where Vijayalakshmi decides to end, and we'll continue the second edition on 8th of August. So Vijayalakshmi, go on, and then how did your journey continue? So you started with those books when your mother-in-law was writing and you contributed. That was your first writing. And
Yes.
then did Jilmil happen?
Yeah, Jilmil happened at the Energy Research Institute. They wanted different characters. So I chose the sun, and some of the other authors chose different aspects. Some chose water, some chose pollution, and we wanted to bring out a set of three books. Therefore, after Jilmil came Sun Magic, which was the next connect. Again, the main character was the son, but it was a school story for school children. That's how it is now a popular textbook in some of the schools, because science can be taught with a lot of pictures and lot of activities. In fact, Jilman the butterfly has a beautiful activity at the end of it. Sun Magic has even how children can make solar cookers. In fact, one of the villages where I did this story, the children made the solar cooker following the instructions at the back, at the end of the story. And Usha, the other thing which connected, so this was the story part of it, but recently, very, very recently, like in the pandemic, like it was earlier, I have been doing storytelling during the pandemic for children every week, maybe 2 or 3 sessions, and to the orphans. And you know what I realized, that what I believed in, that story can be a very good therapy and keep children's mind a little positive, keep the fear away. It had helped. So what began then, I just connected now. And now every week when I do storytelling for those children in the orphan, they have nobody. They can't go anywhere. They've been inside for the last year and a half. And the lovely little time that we spend together, they are the brightest and most cheerful. So what started then, and then the books, and Jilmil happened, Sun Magic happened, then happened the book on nature, Chip Chirp Hoot, how we can listen to nature, because nature has so much to offer us. And
Yes, may I
now, yeah,
just come in, because I just want to tell the viewers that what you started in the pandemic and continuing about therapeutic stories are therapeutic, and that was one of the reasons I started Storytellers Cafe on Bharat FM. Bharat
fantastic.
FM itself, a radio station, is just a year and a couple of months old. Was started during the pandemic, and when I suggested it to the powers that be, they readily agreed and said, "Go ahead and do what you want." And I thought stories are a beautiful way to navigate through these difficult times.
Absolutely,
Listening to a
absolutely,
story sometimes
absolutely,
offers us a myriad of solutions and gives us
exactly,
hope, joy,
absolutely.
and
You're so
resilience.
right, so right, Usha, because it's not only for the children that the story is now playing an important part, whether it's corporates, whether it's team building, whether it's people in any walk of life. What is the hope that is there? The stories, the positive stories. Yes, there are sad stories too, but we cannot lose hope. The positiveness in a story cheers them up a little bit, maybe, but does. Like if when I was doing with the cancer children, the tsunami orphans, the doctor at the hospital would say, "Ma'am, we are just giving them the medication, but your stories are cheering them up. They're giving them that smile." And Usha, when I used to go to the cancer ward, it was not easy. Many people have asked me, how did you do it? Every week without fail in the hot sun of Delhi, I would be there. But those children would just wait for me and my puppets. In fact, they would say, "Ma'am," in Hindi, they would ask me, we will do the puppets. You tell us the story." So it became a beautiful program, and I used to give them books, which actually took their mind away. They were all undergoing chemotherapy. And they were like, it was painful. But for those few hours, they would be away in my storyland, in my bag of stories, taking out the puppets. Each puppet created one story or the other. Similarly, the Tsunami orphans, some of them had got so, traumatized, but with gentle stories, happy stories. Even the child who had stopped talking would come and nudge and hold my sari pallu and say, point out at the book he wanted. That was all, the gentleness of it, to just get them out of that trauma they were in their minds. And the more I thought of it, I believed that yes, all of us go through certain traumas, certain disturbances in life. But when we hear a little story, or when we read a little book, or we listen to some music, we feel nice. So the stories are always, all kinds of stories are there. A little story about the vegetable vendors, also something so interesting. So
Absolutely,
that's
absolutely,
how,
Vijaylaxmi. I know. I was just thinking that if we could wrap up this first part in another 5 minutes, and then we can continue it for next week because there's so much to talk about your work in Akshara Foundation and the work that you attended international conferences where you presented papers. I, of course, am not a part of IBI, but I'm part of AWIC. I have attended a couple of conferences in Delhi and presented stories there and performed as well.
yes, some of your
And there is
fabulous performances.
yeah,
Yes,
and there is so much that you have done, and your background in the armed forces that I know, and that is also something the service somehow gets also the women to to be out there and do something for the community, and I can see
absolutely.
that, because beautiful. I've grown up with army kids when my father was posted. He was, of course, an engineer in the railways, but we too got transferred from place to place.
Yes,
And your connection to Shillong and my being born in the Northeast, there is so much, and uh, it's just magic. And it also gives us the experience to become a creative artist. I feel, those experiences of growing up in those villages, mountain slopes, meeting people, like you said, the chimney being cleaned up. I mean, beautiful. Where would one experience that in Mumbai? Or in Bangalore for that matter, unless you live in Ooty or in Kodaikanal, and you have a house in winter and you experience the chimney. So this is beautiful, and I want to tell the audience that stay tuned for next week, where we bring in more of Vijayalakshmi's experiences and a ghost story. So Vijayalakshmi, before we end this session, please do conclude it in your own words,
okay.
and how you want to take off next week.
Okay. Would you like a ghost story
Sure.
from you?
Yes.
Set
Yes.
again, in the hill stations, there are haunted houses. Every hill station, whether it's Kunur, Kodaikanal, Shillong, you'll always hear of haunted houses. So when we were kids, there was one haunted house a little away from where we lived. And we were always curious that we must go and see what's there. But we were also very scared, not so brave to go and explore a haunted house because there were a lot of stories floating around. Oh, if you go to that house, there'll be some old, cranky, wicked lady who will just take you away. Or they'll say, oh, if you go to that house, there'll be an old man there and you will not be able to come out of that house. So we would be very, very curious. So one day, three, four of the friends, we said, let's go and see this haunted house. And it was at the end of the road of where we lived. And as we went there, we decided, okay, we are going to go and see. And all of us held each other's hands, me and my three, four friends. Halfway, I backed out. I said, no, Baba, I am not coming. You all go. I was a little scared. They said, come on, Vijay. Nothing will happen. We are 4 of us together. So we said, okay, let's go. And we went to that haunted house. It was all quiet. And in Shillong, there's a lot of mist and fog before, just after it rains. So there was a lot of fog. And I told my friends, I said, hey, this is not something which is going to be fun. Suppose we get caught inside. Our parents won't even know where we are. And if we can't come out of that place, imagine what will happen. So one of my brave friends said, hey, nothing like that will happen. I said, suppose we 4 of us get caught inside, who will be there to tell our parents where we are? Okay. It's okay. Doesn't matter. We hold each other's hands and go. So holding each other's hands, we went. And there were pine needles all around. So as we stepped on each pine needle, there was a clink, crunch sound. And just as we were about to enter the door, a black cat pushed open the door and jumped out. Seeing the black cat, there were 2-3 bats which came out of that house. That's it. All 4 of us just turned around and ran back home. We didn't look back. Just didn't look back. Because we were really scared after that. A black cat, bats coming out, and our memories went back to those lovely Enid Blyton books we read, where there was a witch and bats and the cauldron where abracadabra, some potion was being made. And we said, no going into the haunted house. We were scared. When I ran back home, I was almost in tears. My mother looked at me and said, hey, where have you been? Why are you looking so scared? And I started almost crying. And she said, what were you up to? Then I had to tell her, Mommy, we went to that haunted house. We thought we'll go in. And my mother was very, very angry and annoyed. She said, no, nobody goes there. In Shillong, everybody was told, every child was told, don't go to the haunted house. Because there has been some story linked to that house. And once that story which is linked there and it spreads around, nobody wants to enter there. And we 4 children thought we'll be very brave. We'll go in. And what happened? The black cat, the bats which came out, and we ran back home. And after that, nobody ever entered those bungalows, the old haunted houses. And there are many such stories in Shillong of haunted houses and stories behind them. That's for the next time, because it'll be more and more stories when I meet you again the next time with a bag load of stories, a basket load of stories, stories of conflict areas, stories of fun, and stories of laughter. Till then, thank you all and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, Vijaylaxmi. What a lovely story. Did it send chills up your spine? I would request all parents to sit down with your children and listen to this episode of Vijaylakshmi Nagaraj's session on Storytellers Cafe, because this is meant for family listeners. So just wait, we continue. This session is to be continued next week on 8th August, and more stories and more about Vijaylakshmi's wonderful life we'll listen to next week. So till then, Vijaylakshmi, we'll see you next week. Till then.
Thank you so much, Usha. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.